So,
But
Well,
Ryan, it's so good to see you.
Oh my goodness! It is so good to be back. You guys were easily my favorite people to be talking to. Well, Darren, you weren't there during the PAX Online, but
I'm your favorite person
you were
that
there
you wished you were talking to at the time.
Exactly. You were there in spirit,
I was
and
there in
I could
spirit.
feel the spirit and positivity through the interview. But really excited to be back with y'all, and so excited to be able to bring you to our community. And if our community obviously has any questions, I'll tell them to hold your horses, guys. We got 30 minutes of talking to these lovely folks, and then I'll get to your questions. But I will, like I said, let you guys take it from here, and I will follow.
Perfect.
Well, I'm going to let Darren ask some questions because he wasn't here the last time we got to talk to you, and he has some specific questions he wants to ask you about the game, and I think you're the best at explaining it, obviously.
Well, see, here's the thing.
I certainly hope so.
Before I even ask questions, I have to introduce us because we are going to post this interview to YouTube. I need to do an intro.
Right. So we got to officially start the interview with an intro and all the other stuff.
All right.
No, this is great.
Go ahead, Darren. Show us what you got.
Thanks. All right. Welcome everyone to a very special episode of the Burnout Brighter bonus stage, a show where we get to know some people in the industry a little bit better, have some fun conversations, and catch up outside of our normal podcast. Despite what the people on Twitch might be seeing, my name is not Matt. My name is Darren. Matt is unfortunately not feeling so well today, so I will be your Matt 2.0. I will be your lovely host for this evening, and I am, of course, joined by my lovely co-host Destiny.
Hey.
And
always,
and very special today, we've got Ryan from Paddle Creek Games, game director of Fractured Veil, and we are live on Twitch while we're recording our regular YouTube episode. Ryan, how are you doing today?
First,
I'm doing I'm feeling so special because of that intro, and I'm super excited to be breaking new ground with y'all about doing a co-stream recorded podcast. This will go down obviously in some record book somewhere, some history book somewhere. So super excited. As I mentioned, one of the most positive, amazing podcasts I've ever been on, or interviews I've ever had. And I'm so excited to be on the podcast officially to talk about Fractured Veil, the survival MMO that we here at Paddle Creek have been working on for the past 5 years.
I'm excited that you're here. I when I was talking to you on Discord, I was like, okay, we have to get him on. When are we going to get him on? We need to schedule him. Right? Because I didn't want you to think we forgot about you. Because I was like, we had so much going on. We just had our 100th episode, which was a huge milestone for us. So you were the next person that we needed to get on afterwards.
Oh, wow. That is a huge, huge honor. And I know when we talked during our PAX interview, I was in a different setting, so there's no cat paintings behind me, but I've got some cool Nintendo
Those are dope
stuff
too.
going on.
Please tell Badu I said hi.
I will. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I got my Nintendo shirt on. I got my Nintendo art to kind of remind me where my video game history started, and excited to talk again about Fractured Veil.
Well, that's actually such a great segue, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about your video game history, because what we like to do is we want to hear more about you personally. I want to peek behind the curtain of game development and talk to the man behind the curtain. What kind of games do you like to play? What are you into?
Well, it's so funny because we just finished recording our Kickstarter trailer. Kickstarter coming September for anybody that doesn't know. Thank you so much. And you can get links for all of that on our website and everything like that. But part of that trailer was really just thinking about kind of who I am and kind of where my video game history started and the big moments, and then leading up to kind of where I am today and what I play. But, for me, it all started, I think what really changed me was playing, I don't know if you guys heard of the Gold Box games. They're kind of some of the original Dungeons and Dragons games from the 80s on PC. And kind of planting the seed in my head. They were the first real wide open world games. They were open world games for 1987, which is a little bit more limited than what we have today. But planting that seed of big open worlds and leading leading to where we are today with the kind of open world games that I currently play. So I play, making games, you don't have time to play a lot, but when I do, I do like to play Rust. That's a big one. And then a lot of my gameplay is actually just doing research and figuring out like what is new, what's coming out there. So Valheim comes out, and I'm gonna put a couple dozen hours into that. And we were recently playing a game called Cryofall together. But then sometimes you just kind of want to shut your brain off, and for stuff like that, like Risk of Rain is a game I like going back to. Yeah, I was in the New World open or closed beta, so the New World beta was real fun. Nice. Those are kind of great games to kind of go into a meditative state, and then the rest of the time it's just a lot of playing games, taking notes, recording timestamps, and stuff like that for all of the survival games and open world games out there.
That's awesome.
I'm glad you mentioned Valheim, because I feel like at some point when you have a break, we should all play it together again, Darren.
Yeah, Darren.
He nearly was it you or Matt who nearly killed me, like chopping down a tree?
It was Matt.
Oh, yeah, I love that about that game.
I don't personally play a lot of survival games myself, but when I do generally try to take them seriously, whereas our co-host Matt will do everything in his power to derail any kind of progress.
Yeah.
You sound like a Dos Equis ad. You're like, I don't normally play survival games, but when I do, I take them seriously.
There's no fun. I don't have fun on the show. This show is just seriousness. No jokes.
Yeah, no, clearly.
He's so like Matt like jokes around all the time, so it's really hard to play games with him, because like when I play survival games, I'm serious. Like we need to set up our base. Yeah, we need to get our food, and Matt's like fucking running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and like.
When I play with my brother, it's like that. Particularly when we're playing co-op games, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, I found this cool thing over here. I'm like, the rest of us, we're getting our asses kicked over here. Come on! And he's just like, there's just people that play multiplayer games as a single player all the time, and you kind of have to rope them back in again.
That's Matt.
That's Matt.
Yeah, one of my fondest memories is actually, I think we were playing Little Big Planet, and him and another one of my friends have a similar mindset where, because Little Big Planet, you could place stickers wherever you want. And so what they would do is they would take the sticker, make it as large as it could possibly go, consume the entire screen right when we're trying to make some difficult jumps so no one can make it to the end.
Yeah, good times. Maybe I'm having second thoughts about this whole Valheim invitation here.
We're really selling it.
I'm either going to get killed by a tree, or we're going to be chasing some guy down and being like, come on, man.
It's true. It's hard to play serious with him.
It is. On the topic of games, actually, that are somewhat survival, maybe somewhat not, on your website, you describe Fractured Veil as a game that's much more than just a survival game. It's got RPG in it. It's got mystery in it. It's got all sorts of mechanics. So what are some of your influences outside of the genre of survival for this game?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I came up with a cool tagline to kind of encompass all of that while we were doing the Kickstarter script writing. And basically what we're trying to say is like, we're not making just your average old survival game. And the tagline is Fractured Veil, survival at a scale you've never seen before. So what we're really doing is looking at pushing the genre farther. And for that, you have to look outside of the genre. And I think that's part of what is problematic in any form of media, via literature, movies, or video games, is it's a lot of derivative. And you kind of, we fall victim for that as well. When we're doing research for games, we're going to go and play. I think we've logged however many hours in, I think, 58 different survival games, and we take notes. And usually what happens is each game will have 98% similarity with the rest of them, and then they pick their 2% to deviate. And when you really want to start kind of pushing the envelope, you have to start going outside of the survival genre, and then you have to start going outside of games as well. And it's going to sound really boring, but survival games are a lot about management. And so we start looking at productivity tools and management tools. So, for example, we use something called Target Process for our project management. And I started looking at that, like, how are they organizing information? I started looking at things like Excel. I started looking at things like Trello and Box.com and content management systems, because we have a lot of influence in terms of what does it feel like to fight and what does it feel like to build. But then again, with survival games, and this really struck home hard when we were testing out Cryofall, is like you just spend so much time organizing your inventory and organizing your resources and organizing your base and organizing your food. And it's like, we got to make this easier for players at the end of the day, so they spend less time opening chests to figure out what's in it and then moving stuff to another chest, and more time just like having fun and playing. So again, boring enough. A lot of our inspiration for some of that comes from productivity tools.
I actually like that, because I know I spend a lot of time organizing my trunks, like my space, like in all of my
you're that person, games. Right?
Yeah,
and it makes it worse when you're playing with other people because they don't care.
They don't care. They just throw shit in there, exactly. And it's like there's a system.
the wood goes over there, guys. Yes. Yeah, totally. I'm the same. I'm like, we were playing Cryofall, and there was 5 of us, and everybody else is like going off and PvPing and having fun, and I'm literally just sitting there, just like cooking for the group, and then organizing the chests. And they come back and like, oh, that was so epic. And I was like, here's your lunch, guys. I'm gonna just... So at that point, I'm like, you have to make this easier. This is so painful.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's me. That's us when we were playing Valheim. I was like, guys, we got to build the house. And then they were off like doing their things. I was like, I just need to make sure the house is built and everybody has a bed. We have enough food.
So like, it's what are we going to do if we play together? Like, everything's going to be taken care of.
That's true. But I mean, like, if we both take care of it, then we could go off and adventure a little bit, I guess. That's
true. Yeah. Okay. There's hope for us yet. And then, I don't think you look at other inspiration. It's such an interesting thing, because you just take in and consume so much media and so many references, and it just like forms this. I always look at it, it's like just sprinkle fairy dust on your brain, and it settles in over the years, and then you come up with these ideas, and really they're just your brain like grabbing that memory from some movie you watched in 2009 and some game you played in 2013, and it's just mixing it up. So I think it's important just to have as broad of an exposure to as many different things as you possibly can, from in terms of games, from shooters to RPGs to MMOs to RTSs to everything else, because you can always find these little nuggets in each. And I think that's where games start to get innovative, is when you are using kind of nuggets of something from an RTS and bringing that into an FPS in any way that you can, or from an RPG and bringing it into like a platformer or something like that.
Yeah, I know. You have some crazy, like, there's a game that just came out. I can't remember. It's a game, it's a roguelike, but it's a rhythm-based first-person shooter. And like, so every bullet you shoot and every time you reload, it's all got to be to the beat of the song. It's like when you make fusions like that, you can get some really interesting gameplay. And on the topic of resource management, have you ever played any of those idle games, clicker games?
Oh yeah, for sure. So were you thinking of bullets per minute for that?
Yeah, bullets per minute. That's exactly the one that I was thinking of.
Yeah. So 100%. So we have a bit of experience developing mobile games over here as well. And, my best friend is the head of a mobile game studio. So a lot of experience in those idle clickers and those idle games. And they can be a pretty addictive digital narcotic at times.
Like cookie clicker.
Yeah, I know. Right. I have a very bad addiction to cookie clicker, I have to admit. Also there was I think it's called Resource Quest or something like that, or the Dark Room. Maybe it's the Dark Room. But like, you talk about how, productivity tools and stuff can be boring, but those kinds of games, they're entirely productivity tools basically, and somehow they can be super engaging.
They're like unproductivity tools.
Yeah.
They're incredibly efficient at making you waste enormous amounts of time.
Exactly.
But yeah, they're very good at it too. And that, I mean, mobile games that's a whole other can of worms, because they're so numbers driven. In our line of work with survival games and whatnot, it's a lot about how it feels and whatnot. But with mobile games, you're just inserting analytics everywhere into the game to see when do they quit, how long do they spend doing this, how long do they spend doing that, when do they uninstall, how much money are they spending, and you just start tweaking dials based on those numbers, and players stop being players. They just become numbers, and the game stops being a game. It just becomes an equation of how do you just ratchet up these numbers. So it's those games are very purposefully engineered to be as kind of addictive and keep you coming back as much as they can. And it's why it's so nice to be building PC games, and particularly survival games, is because so much of what we do is like sitting with our community and our players and be like, how does this feel? Like, does this feel right to you? And most of the time people are really good at telling you when something doesn't feel right, but not so good at telling you why it doesn't feel right a lot of the time. So it's like, well, I don't know why it doesn't feel right, but it just doesn't feel right. And you kind of iterate back and forth. And that's such a more meaningful, I think, development experience than just going by numbers and retention and LTV and ARPU and all of the other stuff that you use to gauge the success of a mobile title.
Well, I think like it just makes I'm sorry, Darren. I think there's a little bit of lag. So when I talk, I don't know when you're.
This is what happens when we record from different countries in different places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just going to say, I think that like really short, I think that's really amazing because it makes your community feel like you care about what they think about the game. And I always feel like I would rather play a game where the developer is open to listening to like my feelings on the game and like the larger community at hand. So I think that's really great that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's so this is the first like real, well, maybe the second, but the first, like, this is the biggest community driven project that we've worked on. And it's so interesting. Like, I was a little bit jaded before, and you'd hear movie stars and musicians always be like, it's all about the fans. It's all about the fans. You're like, it's just like lip service that they pay to make their fans feel good about themselves. And maybe it is with those media and those businesses. But with this, like, I get it now. It's like every day we just log in. The high point of my day is catching up on the conversations. And in our own selfish interest, that's where all of the great ideas are coming from, in the sense of you're going to crowdsource 1,000 ideas from 1,000 people, and you're always going to get better ideas bubbling to the top of that than even the most genius individual sitting in a room coming up with ideas. And I think it gives me a lot of confidence in terms of what we're building because of how much of it has been driven by the community. And it also gives me confidence because I can see how excited people are about the product that we're making. But it in a way, it kind of takes some of the load off of my shoulders because, again, they're always going to have better ideas, and we have our vision and we have our direction and we push it in that direction. But having the community along for the ride to kind of steer the ship a little bit and nudge it in one direction or the other it's been a great experience, and I can't wait to see how it scales.
Well, that's what's so interesting to me about multiplayer survival games is how community player driven they are. Like these kinds of, of course, no video game can exist without the player, but like in the survival genre, players making their own stories is kind of the whole point. That's what guides it. So from your playtesting, are there any kind of player stories that have really, really stuck out to you that have like guided you through the development process as like, that's a key thing, or that's a key moment that like, we really want to capture that?
Yeah. So it's funny how what we think from a development standpoint as trivial can end up being super important or really enjoyable to people. And sometimes we fall in this trap of, we just look at something and how much work is involved with making it. And then that kind of tells us how important the thing is, right? So like, there's some little things. We have our cannibals in the game. We have like mutants and all sorts of ugly creatures in the game. And if you kill humanoids and then just walk away and leave the body to rot, then what happens is you'll see the body will start attracting cannibals to it, and the cannibals will start feasting on the body. And then as the more they feast, the stronger they get. And then if you run into a cluster of like if you go and just run through a field and just massacre 20 mutants, and then you want to come back later, there'll be like 60 cannibals just having a banquet, and they'll all be jacked up and they'll run faster than you. They hit harder. And so what you want to do is you kind of want to clean up your mess afterwards. And you can do that by just lighting bodies on fire with a torch.
Right.
And it was super simple, right? Like super simple to implement. Just you have a fire component, slap it on bodies. You have a minimum temperature, and once it hits that, the body lights on fire, and then it burns for X amount of time, and then it turns into a pile of ash. But just like the reaction from players when they first did that was like so much more. There was so much more excitement and like happiness and enjoyment derived from that than like a system that took us months and months to implement. I mean, it's a core system. It's really important, but they're just like they're just like, that does what it's supposed to do. It's a survival game. And then they're like, oh, bodies. And everyone's just like, and we have this one dungeon that we played through. This kind of the second example of this is there's a cave system, and there was something went wrong with our lighting system one day, and the build got pushed, and it wasn't taking into account what we call the skylight, which the skylight in the engine is like it lights everything from the ground up to give an ambient level of light. And then you layer on top of that all of the individual light sources, be it the sun or torches or whatever. But anyways, something happened, and the skylight just wasn't being turned on inside of our dungeons, and it just resulted in like zero ambient light. So everything is just super dark, and it was so dark that you like without having a torch out, you just couldn't see anything. And so what happened is you would have groups of these people, and they would just designate somebody that had to hold a torch at all times. And then what they would do is they would kill the mutants, and they would light the bodies on fire, and then they would play in the super dark dungeon by the glowing light of all of the burning bodies, and the burning bodies became the light source. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, we're not fixing that lighting problem. That is the thing now. And it was just so cool to watch these people be like, try to figure out, okay, we can't see anything. Who has a torch? Okay, you're the torch guy now. And then they kill some mutants, and they're like, light the bodies on fire. And then all of a sudden, all these bodies are burning, and the dungeon just like brightens up. And then what they have to do is they have to go and like pull more mutants and pull them back into the circle of light around the burning bodies and kill them and create like breadcrumb trails of burning bodies all the way through the dungeon. And it was just such a happy mistake. And just like the entertainment and joy that came from that experience was awesome.
That sounds really cool. Really cool.
That's amazing.
Not that I want to go around burning bodies, but if there's I don't know.
So now we have a flare gun now, so you could run into the dungeon and just drop flares. And then so that was like an in-game kind of very organic thing that happened. But a couple of years ago, we were on our development path, and we had kind of 5 pillars of the game that we wanted to focus on. And we just put it to a vote. We're like, what is most important for everybody here? And it was like exploration, which meant more content in the world, combat, so more weapons, more mutants, refining the guns and whatnot, crafting, construction, building bases, or like social, so chat features, emotes, and whatever else. And we put it to a vote, and we thought, emotes and whatnot might be a little bit lower on the list, but everything else should be pretty even. And the vote came back, and it was like 5-1 for building. And it was just so much more than we were expecting in terms of how skewed it was towards what people wanted, that we essentially just put like everything on hold for an entire year. And we just sat down as an entire team and built, in my opinion, like the best construction system in any survival game. It's the best looking by far, but also just like, how do we make life easier for players? How do we make things easier to snap? How do we make things more intuitive? How do we add more features? And so we just took the whole year to do that, because the community really showed us something that we were unaware of, which is we knew the construction was big, but we had no idea it like was so much bigger than everything else. And now that we have such a great system, you do that vote again, and it kind of evens out, because everyone's fairly happy with where that system is, but they want more dungeons or whatever else.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I'm pretty excited about the building.
Yeah.
It's really hard to build in Valheim. Like the snapping.
Oh my God.
Really, it's so terrible. Such a pain in the ass. But
yeah, it really is. And I mean, like, good for those guys. A team of 5. They were.
I mean, like, devs. Yeah, for a team of 5, it's incredible. Like there's some beautiful stuff in it.
It took us like a year with a team of 5 just to build the building system alone. And so I was like, I can understand why a small team like that isn't going to just dedicate an entire year. But boy, when I first got into Valheim, I was like, really? Because I'm so used to like Rust, and like Rust is the gold standard for building systems, I feel, in terms of how things snap, the menu system, stability, all of that fun stuff. There's so many options. And so you have this expectation, and whew.
Yeah. I'm not like, so for anybody who's watching and like listening later, I love Valheim. I'm not like shitting on it. I'm just saying it's really hard to like
just the base building system.
Yeah, it's really hard to build in it.
Totally. And they have like terrain deformation and voxels, and once you introduce terrain deformation and voxels, like half of your dev team just gets to solve that problem for the rest of the project, because it introduces so many problems.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Go ahead, Darren. I know you had a question.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm just like jumping in. I'm so eager.
No, it's okay.
Eager beaver.
Eager. I'm really curious about your choice to go to Hawaii, because Hawaii is such a beautiful place, and you're gonna do so many terrible things there in your game. It's just gonna be a grotesque, horrific mess. So, what went into the choice of picking Hawaii as a location?
Yeah, right. So we, the co-founders and I of Paddle Creek, we've all been to Maui, and I think it's one of those places that once you go there, I don't know, it really sticks with you in terms of like nowhere should be that beautiful. And I'm sure that there's places elsewhere in the world like that, probably in Asia and probably in like South America. I've lived in Colombia, and even Colombia wasn't like Maui. There's just something so insanely gorgeous about Maui. And so you combine that with, it's so isolated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You've got this crazy like mixture of so many cultures coming together, with obviously the Polynesian influence being dominant. And then you just have like just so many other cultures coming together to make this incredibly rich history that they have. And on top of that, lucky for us, it's so underrepresented in video games. Like you have your stereotypical surfing games or jet skiing games that'll have Hawaii as a location. But there's really not a lot of games that just use Hawaii as like a character in the game, as opposed to just being like a canvas or a backdrop that just, is behind the action. And so all of those things added up to us really just wanting to share this amazing thing to the world, and be like, do it justice, and be able to selfishly take advantage of all of the amazing aspects of Hawaiian and Maui culture to make this game, pretty unique.
I like the fact that it's kind of steeped in a real place, because I feel like most of the time when you play survival games, it's like in some random land you've never heard of. But I like the added realism of the fact that it's actually in a location. So
and like cool. as kind of one of our people on Twitch is saying, you also have the benefit of having Hawaiian shirts as outfit options in your game, and that never gets old.
No. Are the mutants? So will we see a lot of mutants in Hawaiian shirts as well? Can we?
That's the point. So right now we're going to go to Kickstarter in September, and our whole approach to Kickstarter, I think, is a little bit different than a lot of Kickstarters. As we say in the Kickstarter video, a lot of games will go to Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is the beginning of the whole journey for them. And for us, Kickstarter is kind of the end, or maybe a midpoint of the journey for us, in the sense of we've spent the past 5 years building up the foundation for this, the tech platform, the back end server technology, the all of the core systems that make the game what it is. And now we're going to Kickstarter to help fill that core with all of the custom content that's going to make this game really special. We do have a decent amount of custom content, but it just takes so much work to fill a world this size with custom content. And because we are going for that Hawaiian Maui feel, we can't just grab generic assets off of the marketplace and dump it in there. We want everything to have that Maui feel to it. And the mutants for sure. So in terms of thematically, we're going for kind of that Dead Island 2 feel, mixed like Borderlands feel in terms of theme, in the sense of it's the apocalypse, but we really aren't taking it that seriously from a game developer standpoint. And so it's not like this grim Fallout, war never changes kind of thing. It's more of like, you've got this huge fat mutant that's going to eat your face off, but he's wearing this god-awful Hawaiian t-shirt, and he's got like a cane with tennis balls on the bottom of it, and he's just like dancing and doing crazy things. And so a lot of our mutants, we look at them and we're like, okay, how do we make them scary? How do we make them kind of evil, but then, or not necessarily evil, just like scary and freaky? And then how do we make them like really Hawaiian, so that you can't look at them without being disgusted and laughing at the same time? And I think that's part of what makes the game unique, and why having the Hawaiian culture and the Hawaiian setting as a character in the game is such like a positive thing, because you get to see things that you would never see normally.
Yeah.
Please tell me that like one of the backer prizes, I'm sorry, Darren, I just have to ask this. Like, can you get a Hawaiian shirt? Like,
Oh, so we've got shirts, we've got bucket hats, we've got all sorts of things. Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. We don't know. We haven't finalized our backer tiers yet. And one of the number one rules with Kickstarter is like avoid physical objects as much as possible.
Yeah.
But we will probably with one of our partners over at BackerKit be doing add-ons. So you pledge, you get a mutant named after you or something like that, and then once you're done, it'll give you like the add-ons. Like, do you want to add, an extra $20 for something, or an extra $30 for a t-shirt, or whatever it ends up being? But it is a tough thing. It's probably better for us just to have a merch store and people can just buy it from the merch store if they want to, because you pledge like $30 and then the shirt costs $15 and it's $12 in shipping, and then your $30 ends up, we end up basically fundraising for the t-shirt company.
Yeah.
Please have merch. I want a Hawaiian shirt now.
Done.
I need
it. I'll save you the trip to Tommy Bahama.
Okay.
and you don't have to confirm or deny, but I'm really hoping to see some volcano mutants. I want to be able to kick a volcano into a mutant. That's what I want to do.
Right, kick a whole volcano. That's a heck of a kick and a heck of a mutant.
Kick the mutant into a volcano.
So it's interesting because I could take that one of two ways, right? You could have mutants that are somehow like volcanic in nature, or like have adapted to the volcanoes, or you can just have our regular mutants getting kicked into volcanoes and not standing a chance. But that does bring up a really interesting aspect of Fractured Veil that again comes back to survival at a scale that you've never seen before. And so what are the things that we took away from Valheim, which I love, was you develop these kind of bases of operation in each of the different biomes in the map, and then you're kind of like going between them throughout the game. And we kind of wanted to do something like that, but having our own take on it. And so part of the kind of the scale of Fractured Veil is that it's not just the island that you're exploring, but through this cataclysmic event called the Fracture, what happened is kind of reality got shattered into these parallel worlds that you can use this technology to travel between. And so you're not just exploring kind of the island of Maui, but you're exploring this kind of meta map of these connected parallel worlds. So these parallel Mauis that some might be after the volcanic eruption, some might be after an ice age, some might be after the sea levels have risen 20 feet or something like this. And you're finding these portals, or you're powering these portals throughout the world that will take you from one parallel version of Maui to another parallel version. And in one of those, there is a volcanic version, which will involve plenty of lava to be probably falling in yourself more often than not, but perhaps kicking the odd mutant here or there into. And that's definitely part of the Kickstarter as well, that we're talking more about that.
Yes, I'm excited for the Kickstarter. I feel like we'll all definitely like support it, because I want to play the game. And
I'm pretty scared about the Kickstarter. Okay, like
no, don't be.
Not scared in like a funding way of just like there's so much to do, and it's just like how are we going to get all of this done? But if you just don't sleep for a month, anything's possible.
Take care of yourself. I believe in you guys.
I know you'll get it done. I mean, look at how far you've come with your game, right? So you can do it.
I just need to get you on the phone every morning. Just you can have a little pep talk for us. You can do it.
We believe in you.
You're good enough. You're smart enough. And gosh darn it, people.
On that note, we're coming towards the end of our time, so I'd like to ask one last question. And on the topic of feel good and having Destiny call you every morning to give you a pep talk, what is one video game that matters a lot to you?
Okay. So I would say that the video game, I mean, so you have your obvious ones, right? You've got Mario, that first time when you were 6 years old and you picked up a Nintendo Entertainment System, and you're just like, your mind explodes as something that you didn't know was possible is possible. Right. So there's all of the original Nintendo games. There's all of the original RPGs and whatnot I played as a kid on PC. But there's this this cyberpunk MMO called, I'm just looking at my Steam list. There's a cyberpunk MMO called Neocron, and that came out in 2001. And it was by a German company called Reactor, which is now something different. But anyways, that I was running a different business, a telecommunications business at the time, and it was like going down the tubes. And instead of like, I'd been like burning myself out for years trying to like keep this business afloat, and eventually got to the point that like I just cracked and I just like ran away from my sinking business after trying to keep it afloat for like 4 years. And I just started playing this game for like 8 hours a day while doing the bare minimum for my business, which it didn't matter. I could have worked 20 hours a day on the business. It still would have failed for things out of my control. And so I started playing this game. I really got into it. And then I had like web servers and whatnot online. And I emailed found the owners of the company one day, and I was like, "Hey, love the game. You guys are amazing. If you ever need hosting for your game files, there's like a mirror, because back then in the internet you had mirrors for your files. Like, let me know." And sure enough, the head of the company like called me. Like, I got a phone call like a week later, and he was like, it was a guy named Martin Schwitzer, and he was like, he's German. He's like, "Hey Ryan, it's Martin." Like, Martin? What? He's like, "Martin Schwitzer." I was like, from Reactor? And he's like, yeah, we want to host with your web server. And I was like, oh my God. So I had like this moment where I was all of a sudden talking to the guy that made the game that was like literally keeping me from jumping out of a window. And we got into business. I started hosting their stuff, and then that relationship just grew from there. But that was like the first time where I came into contact with kind of the games industry and started talking to them and started being like, hey, if he's doing this, I can do this. And it's kickstarted this whole journey of starting to do indie game development after I kind of learned how he was running his studio, kind of pitching some expansions for his game, starting my own studio, working on virtual worlds, and then all the way to where we are today. Of like, it really was the start of my like time in the industry. And so not only was it an amazing game that I love very much and still is very close to my heart, but it's probably the reason why I'm in the games industry today.
Wow, that was an incredible story. And your accent was spot on.
Yeah. Well, it's great because the company kind of went defunct, but it got taken over by another guy named Kirk. And Kirk and I are still friends to this day. He took over as CEO in like 2003, and then they got bought by Gamigo, and then Gamigo went out of business after Tentacle bought it, and it was like this big mess. And him and I went through some shit together in terms of like failing businesses and resurrecting businesses and keeping the faith, as everything in life is telling you to stop.
Yeah.
And so we have a pretty cool bond, and we both run our respective studios. Him doing amazing work over there with his studio Nuclear, and me doing my stuff over here. So it's great. It's not only did it kind of start me off, but I'm still, connected and deep friends with those people.
That's awesome.
20 years later.
God, that makes me so happy because I'm like in the middle of trying to change my career, and it is stressful. So like everything feels like, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe you should just go back to like doing what you're comfortable doing or what you're good at. But I really want to do narrative game design, and I'm like putting my foot down, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So.
I mean, I think that's the most important thing, is just like putting your foot down. And for me, it was like being able to focus on one thing. And for me, it's always been just not having a backup plan, not having like burn the boats, take the beach kind of deal.
Right.
And everybody's different. Everybody's psychology is different. That anxiety might crush somebody else, but for whatever reason, for me, if there's no way out, if there's just a way forward, then I'll do whatever it takes to make it work.
And you are. Amazing.
You are.
Look at you. I mean, look at you now. Like
it's just 20 years of scraping the bottom of the barrel plenty of times. And it's like that scene from The Matrix when they're talking about like cutting off power to the robots, and they're like, there's states of survival that we're worth, that we're willing to endure, or something like that. And sometimes I think with like really going out on your own, and particularly starting your own business, it's like, how much pain can you take for how long? And if you can take enough for long enough, eventually you'll make it. But I don't think it's the same with narrative game design. Just to be clear.
No.
There's a lot less friction there.
Oh yeah,
and you're in high demand.
Well, I mean, Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard because I'm just starting out. So, like, there are not a lot of associate and junior positions. And I did apply to a studio and I got pretty far for my first time. So, I was really excited about that. But I didn't want to relocate. So, that kind of like nipped it in the bud.
That's weird that anybody in this day and age would want you to relocate. Everything is going virtual nowadays.
Evidently, there are certain engines that they wanted to teach, like with like word input and stuff like that, and they wanted someone on location. So
I gotcha.
But I said in the beginning that I really didn't want to relocate because I just came back from Korea. Anyways, enough about my life.
Destiny,
I'm very, very excited for the Kickstarter and like. Thank you. I've been telling everybody about Fractured Veil. I actually was telling one of my friends and I was like defending it because he was like, oh, it's just going to be like another. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, go watch our review. Go watch the videos.
Yeah.
Like, we were getting in a huge argument. Yeah. Go watch the live stream. You can't tell me it's going to be like everything else. So
Disney's got our back. That makes me feel good. I just need to get you one in our Facebook comments because we run a lot of ads on Facebook for all sorts of things with the game, and one of the things when you do run ads, you're getting hundreds of thousands of impressions, and then you're going to get hundreds of comments, and a lot of it is that. But what I love about that is, it gives me an opportunity to really refine kind of our pitch and our stories, and it's like I'm really thankful. I'm thankful to all of these salty people on the internet because some guy yelling at me on Facebook doesn't mean anything, but when I can respond to him in a polite and passionate way and explain our side of things, it's just making me so much stronger when I get on a podcast and someone's like, you're just another version of Ark. Oh, this is just Green Hell meets Rust, or whatever you want to say. And I've got like 15 replies just in the backlog ready to go because that's what I do from 9 o'clock at night until 11. It's just respond to 12-year-olds on Facebook.
If you don't have haters, you're not doing it right.
Okay, so right. Because then
you're not doing it right. So if people are noticing your game and like they want to like shit all over it, like I know that sounds so dumb, but like that means you're reaching everybody, right? So like you're
stirring it up. Like if you don't have haters, then nobody cares.
Yes. So the more
and that's what I tell these people. I'm just like, man, you are really excited about this. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Here's how we're not Ark meets Conan. Here's how we're not just Rust and blah, 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 blah.
Kill them with kindness.
Take it in stride. Yeah.
Kill them with kindness. Yeah.
We had to do that earlier. Somebody what did they say? They said we had a review for a video game, Dreamscaper, I think. And they...
Call us the reading rainbow of game reviews, and I thought that was a compliment. I love reading rainbow.
I knew it wasn't.
Anything associated with LeVar Burton is 100% a compliment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we thought.
It's like you're the Tom Hanks of game reviews. Yeah, because we're awesome, nice, and everybody loves us.
If that's the worst you can do as an insult, like we'll take it.
So we're just like, thanks.
I fucking love reading rainbow.
Thank you for the compliment.
Totally. So you got clarity from this person that it wasn't a compliment?
Yeah. Matt said thank you, and the guy was like, it's not a compliment.
It's the opposite of a compliment.
I was like, okay.
You were the worst insulter ever.
I know.
Well, we need our trolls to step their game up.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sorry, I wish we could talk forever. I gotta cut the conversation off. Thank you, Ryan. I know I got to be the dad. It's time to go to bed.
But you're such a potty pooper.
But we will ask you to come on to our full podcast whenever you want.
There's a full podcast?
There's a full podcast. Yeah. So this is kind of like where we do a spotlight on some of the games we're really excited about and the people in the industry. And then we actually have a full podcast that we do that's a lot longer and a lot crazier.
Yeah.
So we'd love it if you came onto our full podcast and just talked shit with us. Like,
yes.
We're down.
Okay. Let me know whenever that is happening. I will be there.
Absolutely. We will. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us. And thank you to everyone in Twitch listening to us, all of our listeners. Yeah. If you like what you're listening to, like and subscribe and all that stuff. You can find us on youtube.com/burnoutbrighter. You can find me at burnout_Darren, Matt at burnout_Matt. Destiny, what's your Twitter again? I forgot.
At DMBC32. So you can find us there. And also, right before we go, Ryan, please, can you just, like, for our listeners, like, plug your info one more time? Everybody, we on our channel will put it at the bottom, but just so you can go find out about this game because it's fucking amazing. Like, please.
So for like fracturedveil.com on the left-hand side, you're going to have a whole bunch of links. You can go to facebook.com/groups/fracturedveil, twitter.com/fracturedveil, youtube.com/c/fracturedveil, discord.gg/fracturedveil. We got all the custom URLs
you
down.
Just Google it.
You could, and or you Google it, you'll go to Steam as well. So what we definitely want to encourage,
wishlist that on
Steam. But if you go to the website, that's probably the best place to start because that'll be your hub of all of the things. You can go up the top and check out the story, and then you got links to the Kickstarter. But certainly, first and foremost, please come to our Discord, come to our Facebook group, tell us what you think. Hate on us if you want, but just tell us kind of what you want to see in survival games and be part of this conversation that's really guiding the development process.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And until next time, I'll see you later.
Laters.